At dawn on January 22, 1943. A man who had never fired a single shot in combat slid quietly into the ruins of a shattered Japanese bunker west of Point Cruz. His name was Second Lieutenant John George, 27 years old. State champion marksman from Illinois. A soldier, carrying a rifle his own commander called a joke. By sunset, every man in his battalion would know his name. Because on that day, deep in the steaming jungles of Guadalcanal, John George began a quiet war. A war fought not with squads or artillery, but with patience, steel nerves, and a single bolt-action rifle sent to him through the mail. This is his story. Chapter 1: The Rifle No One Wanted. George's weapon did not come from an armory. It did not arrive in a crate stamped U.S. Army. It came wrapped in brown paper, shipped across the country like a Christmas gift. A Winchester Model 70, fitted with a Lyman Alaskan scope. A handmade precision tool, 9 pounds of walnut and steel, that every officer in his regiment dismissed as a civilian toy. While his fellow soldiers cleaned their M1 Garand aboard the transport ship to Guadalcanal, George's rifle sat forgotten in a warehouse in Illinois. 6 weeks later, the crate finally arrived. Inside was the weapon he had spent 2 years of National Guard pay to afford. He had brought it to war. No one believed in it. No one believed in him. That was about to change. Chapter 2: The Groves of Death. The Marines had held Henderson Field, but the western groves near Point Cruz were still alive with danger. Japanese snipers, 11 of them, perched high in towering banyan trees, picking off American soldiers at will. 14 men had died in 72 hours. These snipers were ghosts. They climbed before dawn, hid in branches so thick that sunlight could not find them, and waited all day for the slightest movement. George was called in on January 21. His battalion commander looked him in the eyes and asked a single question. "Can you shoot as well as they say you can?" George answered with quiet confidence. "Yes, sir." He was ordered to prove it at first light. Chapter 3: First Blood. At 9:17 a.m., the jungle whispered. A branch moved. Not the wind, a human shift, 240 yards away. High in a banyan tree thick enough to swallow a man whole. George eased his breath, set the crosshairs on a shadow tucked between 3 branches, and pressed the Model 70's glass-smooth trigger. The rifle cracked. A figure tumbled 90 feet, snapping through branches before hitting the ground. 1 shot. 1 kill. The first in a long, silent duel. Chapter 4: The Hunter Emerges. Minutes later, a second sniper revealed himself, retreating down his tree in panic. George fired again. A second body fell. By noon, 5 Japanese snipers were dead. The bunkers whispered George's name like a secret. The weapon once mocked as a mail-order sweetheart had become the most feared rifle west of the WWII. But the Japanese adapted quickly. By afternoon, the groves fell silent. No movement. No mistakes. The hunters had become the hunted. Chapter 5: The Day of Rain and Fire. The next morning opened with tropical rain, thick enough to blur the world to a green haze. That rain hit a sniper, 290 yards out, who had climbed while the storm masked his ascent. George spotted him at 9:12. 1 shot ended his vigil. But this time, the Japanese responded not with a rifle, but with mortars. The earth exploded around George. A direct hit crushed the bunker he had used the day before. He barely escaped. Now the duel had changed. They were no longer waiting for him. They were hunting him. Chapter 6: The Bait and the Real Threat. On January 24, George moved to new ground. A cluster of rocks left behind by Marine machine gunners. From there, he spotted a sniper low in a palm tree. Too low. Too obvious. A trap. George scanned deeper. There, 90 feet up, perfectly concealed, the real killer waited. His rifle aimed at the position George had abandoned the day before. George fired at the decoy. then instantly turned and shot the true sniper mid-move. 2 enemies fell almost simultaneously. But the cost was steep. The muzzle flash exposed his new location. Seconds later, machine gun fire ripped the rocks apart. George slipped away into a rain-filled crater, half submerged in muddy water, watching the jungle through a trembling scope. He had killed 10. 1 remained. The deadliest of them all. Chapter 7: The Final Shadow. The last sniper did not hide in the trees. He crawled on the jungle floor. Low, patient, silent. He stalked George the way George had stalked the others. At 38 yards, the sniper slipped into a machine gun nest, his back exposed. But George knew better. Experienced snipers do not sit still for long. This was bait. And sure enough, a second Japanese marksman hid behind a fallen log 70 yards away. Rifle fixed on George's expected escape route. 2 hunters, working together. George sank deeper into the crater's filthy water, breathing through parted lips, letting the jungle swallow him whole. Minutes passed. Then the 2 Japanese began to sweep east, searching for him. When their backs turned, George rose silently from the water and fired twice. Both snipers fell. 11 kills. 11 shots. The grove had been cleared. Chapter 8: The infantry arrives. But the jungle was not finished with him. A recovery patrol, 6 Japanese soldiers, found George's tracks in the mud. They closed in. 1 soldier peered into the crater and locked eyes with the American hiding below. George fired from underwater. The men fell backwards. Chaos erupted. Rifle rounds ripped the air. George dropped 2 more at the crater rim, then broke contact through the undergrowth, fighting his way back toward American lines, with only 2 bullets left. By 11:13, he stumbled into the perimeter. Exhausted. Mud-covered. Alive. Chapter 9: A New Role. His report shocked the regiment. 11 snipers killed in 4 days. A feat unheard of on Guadalcanal. George was asked to build the division's first proper sniper section. 40 expert marksmen, armed with Marine leftover Springfield rifles and unertl scopes. Under George's instruction, they became a lethal force, eliminating 74 Japanese soldiers in 12 days, with 0 American casualties. But George's war was not finished. Chapter 10: Burma. In 1944, he was reassigned to a new unit. 3,000 men preparing for a mission few would survive. Merrill's Marauders. 3 months of brutal jungle warfare followed. Mountains. Disease. Ambushes at point-blank range. George used his Winchester sparingly. Only 7 times. But every shot counted. He returned home a decorated officer, and wrote a book detailing his experiences. Not with bravado, but with the cold precision of a craftsman describing his tools. His book, Shots Fired in Anger, remains one of the most respected first-hand accounts of World War II marksmanship. John George passed away in 2009 at 90 years of age. His Winchester Model 70 now rests quietly inside the National Firearms Museum. A simple wooden rifle that changed the course of a battle when everything else had failed. If this story reached you, if it reminded you of the quiet bravery hidden in the shadows of history, then subscribe to War Era Records to keep these forgotten soldiers alive. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from. Each one helps ensure that heroes like John George are never lost to time.